What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In this video today, I'm going to be doing an air oil separator from GrimmSpeed. I got the box right here. We're going to do an open box and we're going to install it. And I'm hoping, there's a few videos out there, but none of them are really super specific to this year of WRX from 11 to 14. So I'm hoping that the install that I do today will be the clearest and the easiest to understand if you have one of these years. So anyways, let's go ahead, open up the box, see what's inside, and then we're gonna get this thing installed. All right, so let's open up the box. Inside you got your paper on top. You got your fittings. This has zip ties. Looks like it's got some plugs, elbows, T's, all that stuff. Obviously you got your sticker. You got some hoses here. You got a long one. This bigger hose is going to be the 1/2-inch hose. Then you have a shorter 5/8, and then you have another short 3/8. So that's what we got in there as far as hoses. And then obviously you're gonna have the separator here wrapped up in the foam. Go ahead and open this up. So here it is. I decided to go with the anodized red. The machining on this is really, really nice. There's no chatter marks around it. It's really smooth. The anodizing is really nice. The logo on there looks good. And then if you look at the front of this, it's kind of cool. You can see that inside of here is a hex, and they'll insert a hex key inside of there to put these nipples on here. And then looking inside of this, O-rings. So here's where the magic happens. There's where the air is supposed to make its flow through this. You got your ports right there on the bottom. Then you got your threads for your oil cap section. And anyways, this thing looks really nice. The machining on it is really clean. And the O-rings on this feel really good also. Every little part of this thing is machined really nice, and it looks really, really good. So now that we've taken a look at what is inside the box, let's go ahead and get this thing installed in the car. Okay, so before I do anything, I'm going to take off the intercooler. Now, if you don't know how to do that, go ahead and take a look at my pitch stop video or the heat shield video. I'll put a link for it up here, and then you can watch that and then come back to this to proceed with the a.o.s. install. So I'm gonna go ahead, take this off real quick without being recorded, and then we're gonna jump to the a.o.s. All right, so the intercooler is out, and obviously first thing we're gonna do is tighten this thing down. Take off this oil cap. Before you thread this thing on, you're gonna wanna pop it up so that you're not twisting the O-ring inside of there. Keep it popped up, screw it in, and then lock it down with a 19mm wrench. All right, so I got a little bit of oil here. Just gonna lube up that O-ring. It's probably not necessary, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Now I'm gonna put this in, and I'm probably not gonna tighten it all the way down because I wanna clock this to how I want the hoses to be run. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll tighten it down, that way this isn't all wobbly and my hose lengths can be consistent. So I'll just start out where I think it should go, and then I'll just adjust it from there. All right, it's snug, but not crazy tight. All right, so first thing we're gonna do, I got that blow off valve out of the way just to make things easier to get to. Now, first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna work on the return line here on the top fitting. And if you look on the instructions or on other videos, people will disconnect it down here at the bottom. But on this model, there's a little hose that goes up to the top here. And this is where there is a plastic line that runs across the top of the motor. So I'm gonna take this clamp off and this entire hose out. And I'm gonna cut a piece of 5/8 to put here, and then do an adapter, and then run a piece of 1/2-inch up to the return right there. First, I'm going to disconnect this top clip. I'm just using some needle nose pliers to do this. I'm going to slide that back. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom here. Just grab it and then slide it up the hose. And I should be able to pull these off fairly easily. There's one side. Twist that and pull it off. And there it is, it's off. So now I'm going to slip this hose onto the fitting there and kind of pull it and see where I need to make my cut so that I can put my connection right there, about 2.5 to 3 inches down this hose. I'm rubbing a little bit of oil on there. Now I'm going to put on my 5/8 hose. I'm going to try to keep the wards down because I want this to be as clean as possible. So now that I have this on, I'm just going to pull this down. I'm going to kind of make like an estimated guess to where I need to cut this, and then I'll put my fitting in there. Now I got my 5/8 the 1/2 inch fitting. I'm going to get some oil on these fittings and then get this plugged in now. Gonna plug this on. Kind of get a rough idea of how long I need to cut this one. Just gonna run this underneath these fuel lines and see what I come up with. So let's take a look at step 1. Here's my 5/8 hose with the OEM clamp up in there. This is cut 3¼ inches long, 5/8 the 1/2 inch fitting with a 15-inch hose routed around underneath all the fuel lines and up to the a.o.s. Now with that done, we are left with this open. Now for me, I don't like how this sticks up, so I'm probably gonna loosen this clamp down here and then twist this so that it faces a different direction. All right, so hopefully now you can see this a little bit better. I loosen that, I clock that, so now that is now facing that way towards the passenger side of the engine bay. So now I'm gonna go ahead and cut about 3 inches of 1/2 inch tube and stick it on there and then put my T connector on. Some oil on there again. I'm just going to keep doing little updates step by steps to make sure that I am covering everything very clearly. So here is what this looks like now. I got the T fitting there, coming back to the sensor right there. Now I'm going to cut a piece that comes off of here and route it to the a.o.s. over here now. So this hose that I just cut that goes from this fitting to one end of the T is going to be 23¼ inch long, and now I'm just going to connect it from each end, and then I'm going to move on to the other side of the engine. So now we got this hose routing, it goes underneath the brake reservoir around to the T right there. All right, now that the T is done over here, we need to make a line that goes from here all the way to here. And what we need to do, we need to disconnect this clamp and plug this plastic crossover tube, and then we can run our hose from the hose that we disconnected to the T over there. So if you can see, the clamp's kind of hard to get to. You can't really get a pair of pliers on there because this loom is in the way for all that wiring. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this cover off the top, and there's 3 bolts. There's one here, and then one behind the recirculating hose. So I'm gonna take those 3 bolts off, slide this cover back that way I can get access to the clamp underneath there. Got those 3 bolts out. Now I just wanted to show you how this slides. You can see that this is all slides backwards. Now you can see under that loom is the clamp for the hose that we need to disconnect, and that's pretty easy access from right there. So you can see right here is where the clamp was. I squoze it, slid it back, and now I can rotate this so that I can actually get it from the other side. And now I can disconnect this hose and put my fitting in here and plug that side of it. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to unplug this sensor and pull it out, slide it back towards me, and that will give me room to get in here and put the plug on. So the plug that you get is pretty long, so make sure that you trim this to fit before you slide it on, otherwise you'll have a bunch of excess hanging off the end. And then once you slide this on, wrap that with the zip tie so that it doesn't slip off. So there is the plug on the crossover pipe. Here, we can actually move this thing again so you can actually see what I'm talking about. There it is right there. I cut about 3/8 off the end, and then I zip tied it right there. That way it doesn't have any room to slide. Now that that's done, I'm going to put this all back on, put all 3 of my bolts back in, and then I'm going to work on the hose that goes from this plug all the way to the T. Alright, so this part I kind of strayed from the instructions a little bit. Now, on the connector right here, where this hose used to be attached, GrimmSpeed wants you to put a 5/8 to 1/2 inch adapter right here, and then plug in this hose into that. But I figured, why not just take it off and plug it directly into the sensor itself? So that's what I did, and I reused the clamp that was on this hose already, and then I just ran it over underneath here to my T right there. Now this hose, I'm just gonna kind of zip tie it up like this. It looks a lot tighter than it really is on the camera, but this is pretty much how I'm gonna have it, and this is 22 inches long for this piece. Now we're gonna go ahead and do the final part down here on the bottom. So for the very last step, we're gonna unclip this connector, pull it off, and then you're gonna take out this white clip here. And then what we're gonna do, you're gonna put the other plug on this. So get a flathead screwdriver and just kind of pry that thing out of there, and then we'll put our plug on that piece. Here's the white connector. I got it pulled out, and you can see I got the plug put on there. I trimmed about a 1/2 inch off of this one and wrapped the zip tie up to the top of the flare. So again, that doesn't have any room to slip. Now to give you a little perspective on where we're working at, we'll come over the top of the intake manifold here. And down in here, I know it's dark, but this is where all these connections are. Now this is the plug that white connector will go back into. And I rotated this 180 degrees, the point towards the driver's side instead of towards the turbo. And that gives it a little bit more slack on the electrical harness on the back of this. So here's the white connector from the back side, and down underneath there, you can see the hose that it came out of. So we're gonna do our 1/2 inch straight connector into that hose, and then do our final hose to the other side of the AOS. All right, so time for the final piece of the puzzle. The last hose that connects right here. You're gonna wanna cut that to 30 inches long, and I fed it above that fuel line, underneath that fuel line, and then around the bottom, right there, and then down into the abyss there is where that connector is. Now, the key for getting that straight adapter in there is just being patient. Just keep a consistent pressure on that fitting and slowly push it in. It'll take a little bit, but it will go in. And then the rest is pretty straightforward. Cut your hose to 30 inches and then route it around to the last fitting on the a.o.s. So like I said before, I'm going to end up buying clamps for all this because I don't trust that it'll stay on due to the fact that slippery oil will be going through these lines. But until then, I will be using zip ties on here. But as for now, I am pretty much done, and let's get this thing all buttoned up and put back together. All right, everybody, that's gonna wrap up this video. Hopefully for whoever is putting that a.o.s. in, this can clear things up and it can get the install done really quick and easy for you. Now this is a super easy install. It can be a little bit intimidating cutting hoses and moving them around, but it's actually really easy. Just follow the steps that I put in here and you should be able to do this in probably less than an hour, I would say. Anyways, if you like this video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below about what you think about this air oil separator. And if you're not subscribed, please go ahead and consider subscribing to the channel, and we will see you in the next video.